The United States, Egypt and Qatar are calling on Israel and Hamas to resume peace talks and negotiations over a ceasefire and hostage release deal. The three countries, which made this known in a joint statement, said negotiations are necessary to close all remaining gaps and commence implementation of the deal without further delay. The proposed talks are stated for August 15th in either Doha or Cairo. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office has responded to the call, saying Israel will send a delegation to attend the talks next week. Hamas, the Palestinian political faction that governs Gaza, is yet to respond. The statement was signed by U.S. President Joe Biden, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, and the Emir of Qatar, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani. The renewed diplomatic push will be seen as an attempt to stop regional tensions in the Middle East. And the European Union has also joined the call for a ceasefire and hostage deal between Israel and Hamas. In a post on social media platform X, the bloc's top diplomat, Josep Borrell, said the negotiations will pave the way for regional de-escalation. Mr. Borrell also reiterated the bloc's full support to put an end to the unbearable cycle of suffering in the Gaza Strip. The framework agreement is based on principles previously outlined by the U.S. President Joe Biden in May, which would start with a full ceasefire and the release of a number of hostages and endorsed by the UN Security Council. Let's bring in President Emeritus, Corporate Council on Africa, Stephen Hayes. He joins us from Washington, D.C. Stephen, good to have you on the program.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Right, a call has gone out once again to Israel and Hamas to close all remaining gaps and commence implementation of the hostage deal without further delay. What do you really think has been stalling the ceasefire talks?
Well, I think there's neither side has really been anxious to have a ceasefire, very frankly. Netanyahu clearly has put off the possibility of a ceasefire. He is continuing the war, and I think that the United States and others have finally accepted that in fact is what's going on. He has stalled it out in the hopes that he can eventually end Hamas rule. The problem with that, of course, is that 2 million people, probably about 80% are non-combatants, if not more than that, are suffering greatly. So it's difficult. Sinwar now, of course, with the assassination of Haniyeh in Iran, that also puts a different spin on the outlook from Hamas. Sinwar has been very anti-ceasefire. Haniyeh was supposedly one pushing for a ceasefire, so we don't know now what is going to happen yet. And we noted in your broadcast just now, Hamas has yet to respond to the ceasefire talks. I think they will respond. I think that it's just common sense. Israel responded because it's pro forma. Now, whether they're serious about a ceasefire, it's a question, because it doesn't necessarily work in Netanyahu's favor to have a ceasefire at this time.
Well, Sinwar was anti-ceasefire talks because he wasn't, the chief at the time. But now that he is fully in charge, are you hopeful about the outcome of these talks later for next week, that maybe, just maybe, the two sides may really see things the same way?
I think anyone who has followed this cannot be very hopeful. I mean, hope reigns eternal, as they say, but it's been a series of setbacks, one after another. You're right that Sinwar was not supportive of a ceasefire as much as Haniyeh was, so we don't know what that will evolve now at all. So I think it's anytime you're talking, you've got to be hopeful. But the degree of hope is another question. And right now, I think the degree of hope is fairly low, given this whole war now nearing a year.
And Haniyeh and Sinwar both have different leadership styles. With what we know of Sinwar, what do you think may likely happen now?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that's what everyone is asking. Sinwar was imprisoned, tortured during his time in Israel. He has a lot of very open hate. He hasn't disavowed that. I think it's hard to overcome. On the other side, in fairness, so too does Netanyahu have a lot of hate. So this is going to be a really difficult to come to any type of an agreement. But I think a ceasefire is the only way to save still tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of lives. Polio has started, begun to spread in the camps. Starvation is still there. Aid can't get in. And I think, frankly, Hamas is as responsible as Israel is for that. But on the other hand, the argument from Hamas is, the terms of the ceasefire would not end the war. It would just only allow Israel to regroup. On the other hand, Netanyahu feels that it would also allow Hamas to regroup. So you have two intransigent sides who are really very reluctant to come to an agreement. It's going to be very hard.
Right, and you see a lot of demonstrations, before now, months ago, that took over, almost every city in the world, asking that the violence be stopped in the Gaza Strip, people protesting for the Palestinians. But Israel has said before that it does not need anyone's backing to eliminate Hamas. Do you think sending negotiators to the talks is finally Israel listening to the voice of reason?
No, I don't. I think that it's common sense. Israel does not want to be perceived as not wanting a ceasefire, and so they're going to send their team, just as they have in the past. And even when their team has come to some agreement, Netanyahu has vetoed it. So it's again, to talk to one another is good. How serious it is, it's going to be decided. Netanyahu has waved his nose at thumb, I suppose, at Biden, but now the politics are changing very dramatically in the U.S. So I think he may be trying to move himself back to more being seen as a more reasonable leader. I think that's going to be interesting. Netanyahu clearly wants Trump as the winner of this, because Trump has said basically he's going to give the Israelis carte blanche. So I think that, again, with Biden stepping aside, gives Biden more power. It certainly gives the U.S. a bit more influence, even though Netanyahu has ignored the U.S. time and again through this war.
Right. Stephen, thanks again for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let's move on. The Israeli government has condemned Norway's decision to recognize Palestine as a state, revoking the diplomatic status of 8 Norwegian envoys in Israel. Speaking in a video address in Jerusalem, Israeli government spokesperson David Mencer said Norway's actions send a dangerous message to those seeking peace in the region. Mr. Mencer also emphasized that Israel would exclude Norway from any involvement in the Palestinian-related matters, describing Norway's policy as one-sided. Reacting to this move, Norwegian Foreign Minister Espen Barth hinted at potential retaliatory measures, warning that Israel's actions could strain diplomatic relations between the two countries.
Israel's Foreign Minister, Israel Katz, rightly ordered the revocation of diplomatic status for 8 Norwegian diplomats here in Israel who were dealing with the Palestinian Authority. Instead of fighting Palestinian terrorism after the October 7th massacre, instead of supporting Israel in its war against the Iranian axis of evil, the terrorism which this country has faced as a fellow democracy, Norway didn't take that role. Norway chose to reward the terrorist organization of Hamas. It chose to reward the genocidal murderers of Hamas and their rapists by recognizing a Palestinian state. Let's be completely clear about this point. They chose to reward the terrorists by recognizing a Palestinian state. What message do you think that gives to the genuine peacemakers in this region? What message do you think it sends to those that strive for harmony between our two peoples? The message it very clearly sends is that terrorist atrocities, murders, rapes and massacres will get you what you want. But Norway didn't stop there. They also joined the baseless lawsuit against Israel in the International Criminal Court, seeking the arrest warrants for our Prime Minister and the Defence Minister. So Norway has pursued a one-sided policy on the Palestinian issue and will therefore be excluded from any involvement in this area. Look, Israel has already given a clear offer on this deal, Joel particularly. Israel has sent the negotiating delegation to Cairo already last Saturday. We've lived up to our commitments. Up to this moment, no response has been received from Hamas.
Meanwhile, dozens of pro-Palestinian activists staged protests inside the Amsterdam Central Station on Thursday, calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. Police clashed and detained several demonstrators who waved Palestinian flags and blocked access to trains. Some also chanted slogans and held banners reading "Free Palestine." For several months, civil servants from different Dutch ministries have reportedly been demonstrating every Thursday in their free time against the inaction of the Dutch government in relation to the Gaza war.
There has been a daily protest at Dam Square for months now, and very recently their license has been revoked. So people are here today not only fighting for Palestine but for their right to protest. And the police have been chasing us all around the city because they want to diminish our presence.
No violence ever come from us. We have been attacked by Zionists and we were non-violent. We just put to the microphone what's going on when the violence attacked on the Zionists. We were non-violent. We never touched anybody in our protest.
Well, the United Nations Satellite Center, UNOSAT, has released findings on the infrastructural impact of the ongoing war in the Gaza Strip. UNOSAT estimates that 63% of all structures in Gaza have been damaged or destroyed during the war. Its findings, based on satellite imagery analysis, classify 156,409 structures as destroyed, severely damaged, moderately damaged, or possibly damaged. According to the United Nations Satellite Center, the hardest hit areas in recent months have been northern Gaza and Rafah. In northern Gaza, it's assessed 2,300 new structures as damaged and over 15,000 in Rafah. In the meantime, the United Nations Children's Emergency Fund and partners are working to provide recreational activities in support of children living in Gaza. According to UN officials, the absence of schooling has caused children to feel isolated, leading to a lack of social and emotional as well as cognitive development. Health officials say the longer children are out of school, the greater the risk they will drop out permanently, which will have a profound impact on them psychologically.
Children in Gaza has lost almost a year of education. No child in Gaza has been able to get education for the past 10 months. It's taking a toll on their education and their futures. All the children in the Gaza Strip are facing horrible difficulties on the emotional level. All the children in the Gaza Strip need mental health and psychosocial support, and that's what UNICEF with partner Tamer organization is doing here, giving a little bit of a respite, a little bit of a normalcy to their children. Some activities that they get out and get disconnected from the realities, the harsh realities outside. These activities help children to regulate their emotions, to be able to face a very hard and challenging life that they've been pushed to. Children shouldn't face that kind and that level of violence. children should be protected, they should be treated well, and they should be given the opportunities that they need. Children really need now a ceasefire so they can grow and thrive.
The VOA's White House Bureau Chief Patsy Widakuswara joins us for more on the crisis and, of course, calls for a ceasefire. Hello, Patsy. Thank you for joining us on the program.
My pleasure.
Right, so speak to us more about the framework agreement previously outlined by President Joe Biden in May in terms of the ceasefire and hostage release deal between Israel and Hamas.
Well, it's still the same deal, pretty much. I mean, the contours of it, the main contours of it are the three phases, right? The first phase is 6 weeks cessation of hostilities in return for some of the hostages held by Hamas and some Palestinians detained in Israeli jails. The second phase is a permanent cessation of hostilities for more returns of hostages and detainees. And then the last phase is reconstruction and a pathway towards a two-state solution. Now, this has been a deal that you say, that, as you said, has been on the table since May. And President Biden at that time said this is the deal that Israel has agreed to or Israel proposed. Yesterday, President Joe Biden released a statement together with the leaders of Qatar and Egypt. These are the two mediators, the two key mediators in talks, intermediaries between Israel and Hamas, saying that all parties must start cessation of hostilities now, must return to the negotiation table by August 15th or on August 15th, either in Cairo or in Doha. Now, Israel has said that it has agreed to sending negotiators there, but Hamas has said that it has not responded to the proposal. President Joe Biden and the leaders also said that they're ready to offer what is called a final bridging proposal if necessary to bring all the warring parties to agreement. And that's where we are right now.
Right. I was speaking earlier to someone who was also analyzing this situation, and I asked if he thought that Israel was really, going to do something this time, or it was just trying to make it seem that it really wants a part of this deal. He said that he doesn't think Israel will be part of it. What are your thoughts?
Well, the analysts that I've spoken to said that if Prime Minister Netanyahu is going to agree to a deal, now is the time to do it. And the reason is the Israeli domestic politics right now, where the Israeli parliament, the Knesset, is on recess for 3 months. And while in recess, they won't be able to succumb to the pressures of the far-right coalition of Netanyahu government to vote a no confidence on the prime minister should he agree to a ceasefire. So the opportunity, the political opportunity is there now. And this is something that, of course, President Joe Biden is trying to take advantage of, pushing Israel to agree on this, at the same time also asking Hamas to come to the table. And this is a really interesting date. If you look at it, August 15th, that's just a few days before the Democratic National Convention, where thousands of Democratic delegates will officially nominate Kamala Harris and Tim Walz to be the Democratic ticket. Obviously, they want to avoid the optic having a lot of demonstrations, anti-Israel and pro-Palestinian demonstrations that have occurred in the U.S., particularly, in the summer, early summer, April to June around campuses. So this is a critical time also politically for President Joe Biden to show, particularly the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, Arab Americans, Muslim Americans, who are saying that the time for a ceasefire is long overdue.
All right, the White House is a big voice in this situation. How optimistic do you really think that the government of President Joe Biden is that maybe something good will come out of this?
Well, they've been pushing for this for months. And of course, every time they push, they say that they are optimistic. I mean, in recent days, they've been telling us, the senior administration officials have been telling reporters that it's in the final stages, right? But it's been in the final stages for several months now. If you recall, the first time President Joe Biden said that he was optimistic that it was going to happen was before Ramadan. So that was early March. So this is really crucial for President Joe Biden. A lot is at stake. His credibility is at stake. And again, in terms of politics and the optics of it, he needs to get this deal done as soon as possible.
And pro-Palestinian protesters are back on the streets. We see activists in places like Amsterdam, other parts of Europe, trying to support the Palestinians in this war between Israel and Hamas. So what's the mood across the U.S. in light of this? What do they think?
Well, there's still some sporadic demonstrations here and there. We saw demonstrations or some protests erupting during Kamala Harris's rally yesterday or 2 days ago. But by far, the kind of massive campus protests that have occurred earlier in the summer, that was between April and June, that has subsided. But if you look at polling right now, the majority of Americans, 55% of Americans, disapprove of Israeli military campaign in Gaza. And only about 41%, this is according to research that just came out this week, 41% of Americans agree or would support sending American troops to help defend Israel, even if it's attacked by its neighbors. This is the lowest since they've been tracking this number since 2010. So there's a certain mood of Americans feeling a lot of questions about supporting Israel, certainly. But in terms of massive demonstrations, we are not seeing it any longer the way that we have seen it earlier in the summer.
And at some point, this moved beyond just Israel and Hamas, with countries like Iraq and Lebanon getting involved, at some point. So, what's the White House position about, a possible escalation of the regional crisis?
That is a big concern right now, right? I mean, especially after the killing by Israel of Hamas leaders Ismail Haniyeh, Mohammed Deif, and also Hezbollah leader Fuad Shukr. Ismail Haniyeh was killed in Tehran. Fuad Shukr was killed in Lebanon. So there's certainly a huge risk of this war in Gaza widening into a regional conflict. And that is something that President Joe Biden has been concerned about for months, and particularly this week. The tensions have probably increased at its highest level since the war started after the October 7th attack by Hamas. So right now, what the U.S. is doing, and through its key allies and partners in the region, is basically saying to Iran, saying to Hezbollah, do not expand this war. Please contain everything, keep calm, because right now everything is really leaning on the ceasefire proposal. So they are saying the key to making sure that this does not expand to a wider war is by getting a ceasefire in Gaza in place, making sure that Iran and its proxies, Hezbollah and others in the region, do not retaliate. And whether or not this can happen, we have to see in the next couple of days and weeks. Right now in Israel, as you know, people are really bracing for an imminent attack by Iran or its proxies. So it's a really, really critical time right now.
Right, Patsy, thank you for your time today.
My pleasure. Thank you.